For our next speaker, we have Sarah Fearnow. Great. Yeah, I got it. I love that name, Fearnow, no fear. I'm sure you've never heard that before, but I like it. Sarah, first of all, is our Phoenix. She's in Phoenix. She's local. So
she's in Tucson.
She's in the state. We're all, yeah. Sarah started volunteering in an adult education class in Phoenix when she was in high school. And she has had a love and passion for this work ever since. Over the past 2 decades, she has taught English language acquisition, computer literacy, and all the subjects for the high school equivalency tests. She's a former Adult Numeracy Institute trainer for Links, and she's a current math trainer at Literacy Works. The 3 statements. She once ate ants in the Amazon jungle in Ecuador. She has rafted down the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon. She has spent 2 summers building latrines. In rural Latin America. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome.
All right, so figure that out. Which one is my last? So I failed to tell Mark to put into my bio there that I do work for Pima Community College in Tucson. But I grew up in Phoenix, as you heard. And for those of you that are local, it was with Friendly House that I was volunteering as a high schooler. So I have been working in adult education for about 20 years. I was teaching for 18 years and moved over a couple of years ago into managing an adult ed learning center. The other side. Not even going. So I'm still in the classroom a lot, but these days it's more evaluating the instruction of the teachers that I manage, more than teaching classes of my own, but I do get in some to teach classes, and that's, of course, the best part of the job. Something I started thinking about in my last year of full-time teaching, and still think about today, is expressed well in a quote that I heard recently. Do all of your students learn at the same pace? Do all of your students learn in the same way? Do all of your students have the same background knowledge and experience? And does your instruction require them to? So, of course, we all know the obvious answers to the first 3 questions, but does our instruction require them to work at the same pace and learn in the same way? Sorry, I'm not used to lecturing to people. I'm used to giving activities and having you talk about it. So I'm like, I'm not used to this kind of thing. All right, so students in my classes used to work together to discover concepts, solve problems, and connect math to their everyday lives. All good stuff for sure. But one thing I wish I could go back and change now is that I often would bring my students together as a group through every activity that I planned. And now it feels kind of like a tour guide that was bringing a bus full of tourists to visit the main square at 10 o'clock and then the art museum at 11, and bringing them all together kind of like a herd of cattle or something like that. So I knew my students' strengths and challenges, but I really didn't adjust my instruction to account for the strengths and challenges that they brought. So what I look for now in the classes that I visit is offering options. And options will encourage students to think about what their learning style is and what their particular learning needs are on that given day. It also helps them advocate for themselves and choose the option that's going to work best for them. There are a couple of ways that I know to do this, and I'm going to talk about each of them really briefly right now. 10 minutes obviously is not much time. The first one is universal design for learning. And the quote that I started with the 4 questions came from Neil Algaro, who works for CAST, which is which founded Universal Design for Learning. And CAST describes universal design for learning in this way. I'll give you a minute to read the slide. So in other words, when a teacher applies the UDL principles to the curricular planning process, they anticipate individual differences that the students are going to bring to the classroom. And they plan in options to remove barriers and help students engage with the materials in the way that works best for them. So I'll give you a couple examples that came to mind just today. I don't know if any of you went to the morning snack where there was a trail mix bar and you got to choose what options you wanted into your trail mix. I've never seen a trail mix bar before, but I think it's a kind of interesting idea. If the organizers of the snack had just thrown everything into one big bowl, then anybody with a peanut allergy would not have been able to eat that snack, right? But in giving the options of putting in the items that you want, then that allows everybody to be able to enjoy the snack. And even the people who don't have any kind of food allergy are able to pick and choose, because even if they don't have an allergy, they might have preferences, and they may not like pumpkin seeds or whatever it is, and so they choose not to do that. So even in this kind of situation where what's best or what's essential for some people, like with the peanut allergy, is going to be good for everybody, because then they get to pick and choose what they want. Another example of this would be how we're going to provide the option of people viewing these talks online. As Mark mentioned, not everyone's able to be here. That's not an option for everybody, but they have an additional option to view the talks online. So again, these aren't examples related to the math classroom, but let's just look at one more aspect of UDL before I share an example in the math classroom. What's essential for universal design for learning, thank you. Well, I'll tell you that later. Different story of why my mind went off. Is that you have to stay focused on what your goals are. If your goal is that everyone is able to eat the snack, then you have to offer these different options, right? And it's easy, as we all know, when you're in the math classroom, there's so many different things going on that sometimes it's really essential to stay clear on what your learning goal is. So let me give you an example from the math classroom. So this is just a simple example, but sometimes we ask students to write about their thinking around a problem. But some students have either weak writing skills, or they're not confident in their writing skills. And so they may not be able to express themselves well in that way. So if we give them a different option about how to show their understanding of a problem, it'll help both the student in being able to express their ideas and the teacher in being able to gauge the student understanding. Because if we only allow them to write and they're not able to produce something coherent, we don't know, did they not understand the math, or were they struggling with the writing? So a second way to build in variability and options into a math classroom is through differentiated instruction. And the way that I learned about differentiated instruction is kind of similar to UDL in the sense that students are given options and are able to choose. which one will work best for them. The difference, as I have heard it, is that with UDL, the teachers are able to anticipate the differences before they even meet the students, whereas with differentiated instruction, they look at formative assessments, see the differences that exist there, and are able to plan for it after that. So here's an example. If a teacher sees through a formative assessment of a volume of a cylinder problem that some students are able to have really grasped the concept of volume and others are still struggling with it, they can build into the next lesson variability where some students are actually physically measuring an oatmeal container to find the volume, whereas another group may be ready to think about more challenging problems like what would the dimensions of the container be in order to double the amount of oats that can fit in it, and things like that. So in this case, all of the students are working on the same learning objectives, but at different levels. Another example is, in this case, students are using chips to create arrays to look at factors. And this pair of students are looking at the factors of a complex number. So they're looking at 12, and they've got 3 by 4 and 4 by 3. And so they're able to look at those and, of course, other factors as well. And then other students are looking at factors of algebraic expressions. So again, students are working on the same concept, in this case factoring, but at different levels. So one of my esteemed colleagues who is in this room uses exit tickets at the end of every class, where on an index card she has students choose from a variety of problems the problem that they want to work on at their just right level. So at the beginning of the course, she explains to them that, of course, this is a multi-level class, as every class is, and that that's okay, and every student is going to make the most progress if they are working at the level that's appropriate for them. And so students really take on to this idea and recognize that that's okay, and that they're going to make the best and quickest progress if they are working at their own just right level. And then the instructor reminds them of that at the beginning of each exit ticket or formative assessment that they do, that they need to choose the problems that are at their own just right level. Wait, please. Okay. Okay, sir. So here's an example of the exit ticket where a student had chosen the problems that were appropriate for her and had worked them through. And I wanted to show you this because of this number right here, which is where the instructor also has the students write on a scale from 1 to 10 how was the pace of the class that day. 1 being way too slow, 10 being way too fast, and then they can let her know. It's another way for her to get feedback about being able to meet the students at the level that they need. And then she can see the range of the responses that she got and see who needs me to slow down and really needs to work on this concept a little bit more, who needs a greater challenge. So incorporating these kinds of changes of building in options and providing variability to remove barriers really causes a change in the teacher's thinking about how students engage with the materials and how students show their understanding of concepts, but it also causes a lot of change in the students as well. First of all, it requires them to not think about the course or the particular group of students in there as something that they have to keep up with or else they're a failure. and it helps build their confidence and helps them advocate for themselves, which will better prepare them for college and for the workplace. So my purpose today is not to convince you that one or the other is a better process, but rather to just to encourage you to provide options for your students, whether it's in the curricular planning process ahead of time or during the class as you're seeing the differences your students have in understanding the material. And my call to action is this. Analyze your teaching and learning goals and your students' individual strengths and challenges, which I think many of us do. And whenever possible, build in flexibility and options for your students to achieve those goals differently, depending on their strengths, interests, and needs.